The last hope. In the cold expanse of space, the stars shined like distant jewels, each one a reminder of the vast universe humanity had once hoped to conquer. But now, Earth was on the verge of destruction. The once mighty fleets of human warships had been crushed by the unstoppable force of the alien empire. The aliens known as the Zoreth had advanced technology far beyond human capabilities. Their ships, with weapons that could disintegrate entire planets, left nothing but ruin in their wake. The human resistance had fought valiantly, but it was clear that the tide of war was turning against them. Most of Earth's major cities had been wiped out. The last few surviving warships, led by Commander Lena, had been forced to retreat to the dark corners of space. Hope was a distant memory. But hidden deep within the ruins of Earth's greatest military base, a secret weapon had been waiting for this moment. The Ares was humanity's final hope. Inside a high-security bunker, Commander Lena paced back and forth, her mind racing. She had received word that the Zoreth Empire was advancing towards Earth once again, and this time there would be no mercy. The Ares was Earth's last weapon, and it was hidden away for a reason. No one had ever seen it in action. No one knew just how powerful it truly was. Lena stopped in front of the large, reinforced steel door. She had been given the responsibility of leading the ship into battle, and that was a burden she could barely carry. The Ares was unlike any ship humanity had ever built, but it also had its mysteries. Its advanced technology was incomprehensible, even to the best minds on Earth. It was said to be too dangerous to use in normal combat. But now, with the fate of the entire human race at stake, there was no choice but to trust in its power. She stepped inside the control room, and the moment she did, the hum of the ship's dormant engines resonated in the air. The crew, a mix of veteran soldiers and scientists, looked at her with a mixture of fear and anticipation. Everyone in the room knew what was at stake, but no one had ever faced a threat like the Zoreth Empire before. Earth's greatest minds had built the Ares with every imaginable weapon and defense system. It was supposed to be the key to winning the war, but what if it wasn't enough? Lena looked at the large screen in front of her. It displayed a map of the galaxy, with the red dots representing the Zoreth fleet closing in on Earth. They had only hours before the enemy arrived. There was no time to waste. She turned to her chief engineer, Dr. Samuel Hayes. "Is everything ready?" Lena asked, her voice steady, but carrying an edge of urgency. Dr. Hayes nodded, but his face was pale. "The Ares is powered up, Commander, but there are complications. The energy core is unstable. If we push it too hard, it could explode. We don't have enough time to make repairs, but I believe we can activate it. Just carefully." Lena's heart sank. The core's instability was one of the ship's greatest dangers. If something went wrong, the Ares could take out an entire fleet of Zoreth warships, and Earth itself. But they had no choice. Earth's last hope rested on this one ship, and Commander Lena would not let fear stand in her way. "Begin the launch sequence," Lena ordered. "We'll take the risk. Humanity's survival depends on us now." The crew quickly got to work, their movements swift but precise. Lena stood by the main control panel, watching as the countdown began. The Ares was a massive warship, its dark, sleek design a testament to the human race's ingenuity. It was the product of decades of research, built from the most advanced materials Earth had ever known. But none of that mattered if it couldn't be controlled in the heat of battle. The countdown clock ticked down relentlessly. Seconds felt like hours. Every moment that passed brought the Zoreth closer. The cold, dark silence of space was now interrupted by the sound of the engines powering up. The Ares's engines roared to life, shaking the hull as they prepared for launch. Lena gripped the control panel, her breath shallow. She was afraid of the unknown, of what they were about to face. But there was no room for fear now. She looked at the faces of her crew, each one a reminder of the people they were fighting to protect. They were all in this together. The countdown reached its final seconds. Launch in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The Ares shot out of the docking bay, a massive explosion of force propelling it into space. The crew held their breath, but the ship held steady. The Ares was finally free. The tension in the room was palpable. They were now in space, hurtling towards the front lines of the battle. But there was something else, a feeling that the Ares wasn't just a ship. It was something more, something alive. It was as if the ship itself had been waiting for this moment too. Commander Lena looked at the view screen as the dark void of space stretched out before them. In the distance, the first of the Zoreth ships appeared, their massive forms emerging from the blackness. They were a terrifying sight. Their ships were sleek, almost organic, with smooth curves and sharp angles. Their weapons could destroy planets in seconds. But they had never seen anything like the Ares. Lena's voice rang out with unshakable confidence. Prepare for battle. Humanity's last stand begins now. The Ares surged forward, its immense power ready to tear into the Zoreth fleet. The battle for Earth had just begun. The awakening of power. As the Ares raced through the darkness of space, Commander Lena stood at the helm, her eyes fixed on the view screen ahead. The alien fleet was growing closer by the second, and every passing moment increased the weight of the situation. The fate of humanity rested solely on their shoulders, and Lena couldn't afford to make a mistake. The ship's control room hummed with the steady sound of its powerful engines. The crew was working in perfect synchrony, but there was an underlying tension in the air. They all knew that the Ares was humanity's last hope, but no one had truly seen what it was capable of. The ship had been hidden away for a reason. No one had dared to activate its full power until now. Dr. Hayes, the ship's chief engineer, looked up from his station, his face drawn with concern. "Commander, we're reaching the outer perimeter of the enemy fleet. We'll be in range in 2 minutes. The core energy levels are rising, but it's unstable. We might not get another chance to stabilize it once we engage." Lena took a deep breath. "We don't have the luxury of time, Doctor. The Ares needs to be ready now. Prepare to fire." For a moment, the only sound in the room was the steady beeping of the control panels. Then, the ship's sensors began to beep faster, signaling that they were within striking range. Lena's fingers hovered over the command controls as she spoke with quiet determination. "Initiate full power." The Ares began to hum, its massive frame vibrating as the core energies surged to life. The ship's systems flickered momentarily, as if adjusting to the sudden influx of power. For a brief moment, Lena felt a strange, almost primal sense of connection with the ship, as if it were more than just metal and wires. It was a living, breathing entity, ready to fight. But Dr. Hayes' voice cut through her thoughts. "Commander, the core's energy flow is spiking. We can't sustain this level for long. If we push it too far, we risk catastrophic failure." Lena didn't hesitate. She knew the risks. "We fight or we die. There's no other choice. Push it to maximum." The crew braced themselves as the Ares came alive in a way they had never experienced. The ship's weapon systems powered up, energy shields flared into existence, and the engines roared with a deafening surge of power. Every part of the ship seemed to hum with raw energy, and the very air around them seemed charged with electricity. Outside, the Zoreth fleet loomed closer, massive warships slowly circling around Earth. Their ships were armed with devastating laser cannons, able to obliterate entire fleets with a single strike. Their advanced technology was a terrifying sight, but the Ares was unlike anything they had ever faced. It wasn't just a warship. It was the culmination of human ingenuity, the final answer to a galaxy that had underestimated humanity. The first alien ships fired their weapons, sending deadly beams of energy toward the Ares. The ship's energy shields flared brightly, absorbing the blasts with ease. The shields held strong, but the Ares rocked from the impact, sending a jolt through the crew. Lena's eyes narrowed as she looked at the alien ships on the view screen. "Target the lead ship. Fire everything we've got." The crew worked swiftly, their hands moving in practiced unison. The Ares' powerful weapons systems locked onto the alien flagship, its laser turrets spinning into position. A massive cannon emerged from the ship's belly, charging with a pulse of blue light. Then, in a burst of blinding brilliance, it fired. The shot struck the Lid Zoref ship dead center, sending it spiraling into an explosion of fire and debris. The crew watched in awe as the massive enemy vessel was destroyed in an instant, a testament to the Ares' overwhelming power. For a moment, there was silence. The enemy fleet hesitated, unsure of what to do in the face of such force. But only for a moment. The remaining Zoref ships quickly regrouped, sending wave after wave of fire toward the Ares. They were relentless, but the human ship's shields absorbed the blasts with ease. Then the unthinkable happened. A large, ominous ship broke through the Zoreth formation, larger and more menacing than any they had encountered before. Its hull was dark and jagged, with strange energy pulsating from its core. It was a battleship unlike anything seen in human space, a symbol of the Zoreth Empire's ultimate power. Lina's stomach dropped as she saw it on the view screen. That's their flagship, but it's much more powerful than we thought. Dr. Hayes' voice echoed with urgency. Commander, the energy levels on the core are reaching dangerous levels. We can't take much more of this. But Lena's resolve remained firm. She wasn't going to back down. Hold steady. This is humanity's last chance. We fight now, or we lose everything. The crew braced themselves as the massive Zoreth battleship fired its first volley. The beams of energy tore toward the Ares, and in that moment, Lena knew that the battle had only just begun. The true test of the Ares and its crew had arrived. The Ares' weapons systems locked onto the enemy ship as the countdown to retaliation began. The battle between humanity's last hope and the overwhelming force of the Zoreth Empire was about to reach its most dangerous and decisive moment. And in the midst of it all, Lena could feel the power of the Ares beneath her feet, alive, unstoppable, and ready for whatever came next. Into the fire. The Ares surged forward, its engines blazing with incredible power. Commander Lena's hands gripped the control panel as her heart raced. The massive Zoreth flagship loomed ahead, its weapons brimming with deadly energy. The Ares had only moments to react. Its advanced sensors locked onto the enemy vessel, and the battle began in earnest. The first wave of Zoreth fire came in fast, beams of concentrated energy that sliced through space like knives. But the Ares' shields flared to life, absorbing the blasts with precision. The ship shook with each impact, but it held strong. The Ares was built for this. It wasn't just a ship, it was a fortress, a titan of human engineering, and it would not fall easily. Lena's voice cut through the tension in the control room. Target their weak points. Fire at will. The crew worked with relentless focus, coordinating every weapon on the ship. The Ares fired its main cannon, the massive blue beams streaking through space and slamming into the Zoreth flagship. But the blast only scratched the surface. The alien ship's armor was formidable, and the impact barely phased it. Dr. Hayes looked up from his station, his face filled with concern. Commander, their defenses are stronger than we thought. The Ares' main weapons aren't enough. We need to find another way. Lena's mind raced as she searched the view screen for any advantage. The Zoreth ship was massive, its defenses nearly impenetrable. But she knew the Ares had one more secret weapon, a maneuverability that the alien flagship couldn't match. Prepare the secondary engines, Lena commanded. We're going to hit them where it hurts. The Ares' smaller engines roared to life, and the ship shot forward with surprising speed, darting past the enemy fire. The Zoreth flagship attempted to track them, but the Ares was too agile. It danced between the enemy beams, dodging with a grace that no Zoreth ship had ever expected from such a massive vessel. Lena's eyes never left the screen. All weapons locked on. Focus fire on their engine nacelles. We take out their engines, and they're dead in space. The Ares unleashed a torrent of firepower, the secondary weapons ripping through the darkness. The alien flagship's shields flared, but the Ares was relentless. With each shot, a section of the Zoreth ship's armor cracked, and with each strike, their engine core grew weaker. But the Zoreth weren't giving up so easily. The flagship released smaller attack drones, buzzing through space with deadly precision. The Ares' shields flared as they collided with the drones, exploding on impact, but there were too many. The drones kept coming, relentless in their assault. Damn it. Lena cursed as the ship rocked with another blast. The Zoreth weren't just fighting. They were out to destroy everything. Dr. Hayes shouted from his station, "We can't keep this up. We're losing power in the starboard engines. If we don't end this soon, we'll be sitting ducks." Lena's mind raced, searching for an answer. They were surrounded, their weapons depleted, their shields weakening. The Zoreth flagship was closing in for a final strike. If they didn't make a move now, they would be wiped out. But then, something clicked in her mind. A risky, dangerous plan that could give them the edge they needed. "Activate the stealth systems," she ordered, her voice cool with resolve. "We're going for the final strike. Lock all weapons on their engine core," Lena commanded. "This is our last chance." The Ares' weapons systems hummed to life, and the ship crept into position behind the alien vessel. Then, with the pull of a trigger, all hell broke loose. The Ares fired everything it had left: missiles, lasers, and the full force of its main cannon, all directed at the Zoreth flagship's engine core. The explosion was blinding. The Zoreth ship's hull buckled as the blast tore through its core, and for a moment, the entire battlefield was filled with light. The shockwave rattled the Ares, but the ship held steady. The view screen cleared, and before them, the Zoreth flagship was a smoldering wreck, floating lifeless in space. The crew of the Ares let out a collective sigh of relief. They had done it. They had taken down the Zoreth flagship. But there was no time to celebrate. "Commander, we've got more ships coming in," Dr. Hayes shouted. "The Zoreth are regrouping. We're not done yet." Lena's heart sank. The battle had only intensified. But with the flagship destroyed, the Zoreth's coordination would suffer. The Ares had dealt a devastating blow, but the war was far from over. "Get ready for another fight," Lena said, her voice steady, determined. "We've only just begun." The Ares was still intact. The crew was still alive. And as long as they fought, humanity's last hope would never give up. A deadly chase. The Ares sailed through space like a shadow, its hull barely visible against the backdrop of distant stars. Behind them, the wreckage of the Zoreth flagship drifted, but the victory was short-lived. The Zoreth fleet had regrouped faster than anticipated. And now, their remaining ships were in full pursuit, determined to annihilate humanity's last hope. Lena's fingers tightened around the command console. She could feel the heat of the battle in her chest, the tension rising with each passing second. They had taken down the flagship, but the Zoreth weren't finished yet. Now they had to deal with the full force of the remaining fleet, and they were closing in fast. "Commander, they're catching up," shouted Lieutenant Mira, one of the ship's navigators, her voice strained with urgency. "We're not going to outrun them at this speed." Lena glanced at the view screen, where the Zoreth warships loomed larger by the second, their dark forms gaining ground. The Ares was fast, but it couldn't match the acceleration of the enemy ships, not with the damage they had already sustained. "Can we lose them in the asteroid field?" Lena asked, her mind racing for a solution. Mira hesitated. "It's risky. The Ares can take a few hits, but we might not survive if we get caught in a collision. The asteroids are too unpredictable." But the Zoreth fleet wasn't giving them any choice. Already, the enemy ships were firing, their deadly energy beams ripping through space in pursuit. Lena could hear the blasts as they struck the Ares' shields, each one rattling the ship's frame and threatening to break their defense. The shields flared bright, absorbing the blows, but their energy was quickly draining. Lena's mind sharpened. She couldn't afford to let the heirs get caught in this pursuit. "Prepare the secondary engines," she ordered. "We're going into the asteroid field." "Are you sure about this, Commander?" Dr. Hayes asked, his voice filled with doubt. "It's too dangerous. We won't be able to maneuver well enough to avoid the debris." "I'm not asking for your opinion, Doctor," Lena replied, her tone hard. "Activate the engines. Now." The crew worked swiftly to adjust the ship's power distribution, diverting all available energy to the secondary engines. The Ares surged forward again, its speed increasing as it headed straight for the asteroid field. Outside, the massive rock formations loomed, some small and jagged, others large enough to dwarf the Ares itself. It was a dangerous maze, one that had destroyed many ships before. But Lena trusted the Ares' agility. They would survive, or they would die trying. "We've got incoming fire," Mira warned as another wave of energy blasts came from the Zorith fleet, their beams cutting through the void. Lena watched the view screen with narrow eyes, her fingers dancing across the console, activating the ship's evasive maneuvers. The Ares ducked and weaved through the debris, narrowly avoiding a collision with a massive asteroid that came hurtling toward them. The ship's engines roared, pushing the vessel to its limits as Lena expertly guided them through the chaos. A tense silence fell over the control room as the crew followed her orders. Every hand moved in perfect synchronization, pushing the ship to its limits. The remaining power reserves were diverted to the weapons systems, and the Ares' massive main cannon powered up. It was a gamble. If they fired, they wouldn't have enough energy left to make another move. They had to make this strike count. The Zorith warships closed in, their dark shapes growing larger on the view screen. The energy beams from the alien fleet began to land with brutal force, pummeling the Ares' shields. The lights flickered as the ship rocked violently from the hits, yet the shields held, the resilient human-made defenses absorbing the blows with a faint, flickering glow. But Lena knew they wouldn't last forever. "Commander," Dr. Hayes shouted, panic creeping into his voice. "Shields are failing. We need to fire now, or we'll be defenseless." The massive Zorith flagship came into view again, its main weapon glowing ominously. It was poised to fire the killing blow. Lena's mind raced. If they didn't destroy it first, they were doomed. She could feel the weight of the decision press down on her. There was no second chance. "Prepare for the final strike," Lena commanded. With a heavy heart, she braced herself as the Ares' weapon systems locked onto the Zorith flagship, every fiber of her being focused on that one target. The countdown began. Firing in 3, 2, 1. The Ares unleashed the full force of its main cannon. The ship's entire frame shuddered as the blue energy beam shot forward, streaking through space with deadly precision. The alien flagship was directly in its path, and the beam struck it with catastrophic force. For a split second, the universe seemed to hold its breath. Then the explosion. The Zorith flagship erupted in a massive ball of fire and debris. The shockwave sent ripples through space, and the Ares was knocked backward by the force of the blast. The view screen filled with the remnants of the destroyed flagship, its hull shattered into pieces, drifting in all directions. The crew stood in stunned silence. It was over. The Zorith flagship was gone. But the battle wasn't won yet. "More ships are coming in," Lieutenant Mira reported, her voice tight with anxiety. "We've taken down the flagship, but the Zorith fleet is regrouping. They're sending reinforcements." Lena wiped the sweat from her brow, her eyes scanning the view screen as more Zorith ships appeared, their numbers overwhelming. The Ares was exhausted, its systems failing, and the crew was at the limit of their endurance. Yet, in Lena's eyes, there was no fear. There was only resolve. "We have one more fight left in us," Lena said, her voice steady but fierce. "Prepare for the final assault." The Zorith fleet was larger than ever. They had been crushed once, but they were far from defeated. This time, they would be ready. The Ares may have been humanity's last weapon, but it was also their symbol, the symbol of their strength, their will to survive. As the Zorath fleet advanced, the crew of the Ares readied themselves for what would be the ultimate test. It was all or nothing. Lina's eyes hardened. She knew that if they didn't act now, it would all be over. Humanity's last hope would fall, but not without a fight. "We fight," she declared, "or we die trying." The Ares surged forward once again, its damaged engines roaring as the crew readied the final assault. They were not backing down. Not today. Humanity's victory. The Ares surged forward, its damaged hull groaning under the strain. But its weapon systems blazed with fury. The crew, though exhausted, stood firm, determined to finish what they had started. The Zorath fleet was closing in, their warships encircling the Ares like a predator stalking its prey. But Lina was ready. "Prepare for the final push," Lina commanded, her voice unwavering despite the odds. "We finish this now." The Ares was battered, its systems failing in several sections, but it still had its weapons, and its will to survive was unbroken. The remaining Zorath ships were in a loose formation, but they were unrelenting. This time, however, they had underestimated humanity's last hope. "We need to act fast before their reinforcements arrive," Lieutenant Mira said, her voice tinged with urgency. The massive Zorath warships had spread out, but they were preparing to launch their final assault, and the Ares was running out of time. Lina glanced at the view screen, calculating the distance and the trajectory. The Zorath were forming a perfect target. "We're going straight through them," Lina said. "Set course for the center of their fleet. We'll break through and force them to scatter." The Ares powered forward, its speed increasing despite the damage it had sustained. As it rocketed toward the Zorath fleet, the remaining human crew watched in awe, knowing that they were about to face a battle that could decide the fate of their entire species. "Lock all weapons onto their engines," Lina ordered. "Fire everything." The Ares unleashed its full arsenal, its remaining missiles and energy weapons screaming through the vacuum of space toward the enemy. The Zorath ships tried to retaliate, their weapons charging and firing, but they were too slow. The Ares was too fast and too relentless. One by one, the Zorath ships fell as their engines were torn apart by the Ares' concentrated firepower. The space around them erupted with explosions as the mighty alien fleet began to break apart. But there was still one last Zorath warship, larger and more powerful than the others, looming in the distance, its massive guns charged up, ready to fire on the Ares. "Brace for impact," Dr. Hayes yelled as the massive ship fired, sending a blinding beam of energy toward them. Lina didn't flinch, evade, full speed ahead. The Ares swerved just in time, dodging the blast as it barely missed their shields. The ship rocked as they continued to push forward, the Zorath's final weapon threatening to end them in an instant. With the remaining power in the engines, Lina made a desperate maneuver. She ordered the ship to spin rapidly, using the force of the spin to slingshot the Ares directly behind the enemy flagship. The crew gasped as the ship performed the impossible, making a 180-degree turn in a matter of seconds, coming face to face with the enemy ship's weak spot, the engines. "We can do this," Lina muttered, gripping the controls. One last shot. The Ares' cannons charged. The massive Zorath ship loomed before them, its shields flickering as it tried to regroup. It was slow to react as the Ares fired its final energy burst. The shot hit the Zorath flagship's weak point, its engine core. The blast tore through the alien ship's armor, igniting the core and causing a cataclysmic explosion. The flagship erupted in a fiery ball of destruction, the shockwave sending the Ares flying backward from the force of the blast. The control room shook violently as the crew struggled to hold on. But they had done it. The Zorath fleet, now leaderless and in disarray, scattered into the vast emptiness of space. The Ares stood victorious, its weapons still silent but its power undiminished. The crew breathed a collective sigh of relief, but there was no time to celebrate. They had won, but the war was not truly over yet. "We did it," Mira whispered, disbelief in her voice. Lina's eyes remained fixed on the view screen, which now showed the vastness of space in front of them, free from the Zorith threat. She knew this was only the beginning. Humanity had just taken its first steps toward reclaiming the galaxy. There would be more battles ahead, more enemies, more wars to fight. But for the first time in a long while, she allowed herself a moment of hope. "Get us back to Earth," Lina said softly. "It's not over, but we've earned a victory." The Ares slowly began its journey back toward Earth, its mission complete. Humanity's last warship had not only survived but had triumphed against overwhelming odds. The crew of the Ares had proven that no matter how dire the circumstances, humanity's resilience and determination would never be extinguished. And though the universe was vast, the fight for humanity's future was far from over. Lina knew one thing for certain: as long as there were people like her, like the crew of the Ares, humanity would never surrender. The last human warship had fought, had won, and would rise again, ready for whatever the galaxy would throw at them next. The battle for Earth was over, but the war for the stars had only just begun.